podcast in which one man strives to level up his geekhood and helping you do the same, one battle at a time. Now, let's get geeky with Gamer Leaf.
The Triplanetary Confederation is in a time of expansion. With recent successes both in and out of the solar system, the Admiralty has decided to push outward once again, exploring space in a way that has not been done since before the Interplanetary War. You are a part of this massive effort, which is sending huge starships through Hendeka space to the nearby stars, with the stated goal of not only exploration, but to seek out human colonies which are far-flung. The Triplanetary Confederation seems to be behind its rivals. The UN of Earth has already established several colonies in its trust territories, and the Lunar Republic seems to be one step ahead, having contacted several colonies already, offering them alliances. Even worse, the Triplanetary Fleet is still relatively new and unsteady. Many of the members of the planetary militias which came together believe that they would be better off alone, or seek to gain an upper hand. The Lunar Republic has spies everywhere, several of which have been exposed, and the UN may well have the most expert spies of all. Very few have been discovered. It's clear that if the Triplanetary Confederation is to survive and not be subsumed by its rivals, it will have to expand and find new allies. With even captains facing assassination attempts on their own ships, choosing to explore space at this time might seem like a foolish move. The call of exploration seems worth the risk, however. What will you find out there?
Did that sound familiar to you guys? It didn't to me neither, but this is a story of Battlecruiser Alamo RPG, powered by Air D10 by Shades of Vengeance, and we're lucky enough to have on possibly one of the creators and masterminds. I know the one who runs Shades of Vengeance at the very least is Ed Jowett. Is that correct? Is that how you fall in line, or how do you fall in line with this, Ed?
You're correct that I run Shades of Vengeance. I'm also the person who wrote the rules segment of this book. So I usually create the games and I do everything end to end. So this was a really interesting project for me because Battlecruiser Alamo is a series of novels, and presumably you'll link them in the show notes so people can find them. They're military sci-fi, and that really presses my buttons. I love sci-fi. And the guy who wrote them, Richard Tung, I really, really enjoyed sitting down and reading these novels. And when we spoke about the possibility of licensing the novels for, a role-playing game, he was really excited. I was really excited about the possibility of such an awesome series, sort of being a role-playing game powered by your D10. And he actually volunteered to do the vast majority of the story writing involved in the book. So although I wrote that summary that you just heard, Richard actually wrote all of the short stories that we habitually include in our books. He wrote all of the background for the planets, the locations, the factions. He wrote all of that because who is more expert than the actual author themselves? That's incredibly unusual. You don't usually get someone who is that involved. So it's really, really exciting to have Richard putting so much time and effort into this. He's written well over 120,000 words for this book.
Oh, wow. Well, that's pretty cool. So, yeah, and just welcoming you back to your third episode. I think you're the one we've had on Getting Geeky with Gamer Leaf the most.
Oh, I'm a winner. Brilliant.
Yeah, before this, you and Mark McKinnon were tied at 2 apiece, I think.
Well, it is an absolute pleasure to be back. It's definitely the case that I do a lot of, I do a lot of things. I've always got projects going on. I mean, I was here, it wasn't very long ago now, talking about Era the Empowered, of course.
Yeah, for sure. So how do you go ahead and find the time to go ahead and read Richard Tung's book with all the projects you're creating and everything?
Well, that's a very good question. And actually, I was unable to read beyond the 5th book, and he's got 40. Maybe it's 30. It's between 30 and 40. But fortunately, we decided that the role-playing game would only consist of the first 3 books. After that, there's a bit of a tonal shift. There are new enemies that come forward, and we decided that we would use those as expansions to the initial book.
I guess you better get reading then, so you can be ready to come out with the expansions.
Oh yeah, I'll have to before we do. But this initial book, it's based on the first three. There's very much a feeling of betrayal. Of either your allies have spies in your midst and they're going to turn on you any minute, or even your own crew might turn on you. For their own reasons. And that's a theme that comes through very, very strongly in all three of the first three. And that was something that I really wanted to capture with this game. So there are a lot of notes for the GM that I've written about how you can sort of include this feeling of being set upon by everybody. Without one of the things that I've tried to avoid though is PvP in the game. So the players will all be loyal, but the rest of the crew potentially is another matter.
Okay. Well, there you go. That's pretty cool. So yeah, so it's not player versus player, even though you said in the books they kind of are.
No. In the books, some of the crew will turn on some of the other crew. Right. It doesn't necessitate that the members of the crew that turn on each other are players. I mean, the average number of players at a table is about 4. Even then, even if you have as many as 10, which is the biggest group I've ever run of a single role-playing game, at the same time, there are still more officer positions who can be traitors. You can have random grunts who are traitors. You can have NCOs or other junior personnel who are traitors. So, if you imagine it sort of as like, okay, well, you are the tactical officer. Your job is to deal with the weapons, right? And the security personnel are traitors. Well, they'll turn their guns on you and try and stop you firing at the ship that's coming over to board you. That doesn't necessarily mean that anyone else on the bridge is a traitor, right? So PvP then isn't necessary while still having that conspiracy feel.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that makes sense. So that's pretty cool. And so Battlecruiser is a kind of, I know you said you don't care for Star Wars as much, but I know you like Star Trek. Is this similar to Star Trek in any essence?
I do like Star Wars, I just don't like it as much. I consider this to be sort of similar to Star Trek in ways. If I had to pick a TV series that's most like, I would say it's Babylon 5. There's a very strong sense of the military bit, and while there was in the original series of Star Trek, that sort of lessened a bit, in my opinion, as the series went on. And the senior officers don't mix with the NCOs, right? Which is what happens in the military. The officers do their thing, the non-commissioned individuals do their thing, and they're pretty much separate. And even the senior officers and the junior officers don't mix very often. So it's that came through in Babylon 5. You're focusing only really on the main personnel and the ambassadors. Those are the only people who ever really interact. We never really see any junior personnel interact with them.
Okay, yeah, I remember that from my military days or whatnot. It was pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. So and the feel of the combat is something that was really, really interesting to me, because in most of my games, combat is relatively forgiving. You can be shot, someone can achieve the kill threshold, and if you're a player, you don't die, you're knocked unconscious and start to bleed out, right? So you have an opportunity for someone to come along and heal you. Now, combat in this game is so lethal. Sorry, in the novels, it's so lethal. So in the game, it had to be equally lethal. In the novels, half of the ground troops die in the first novel, right? And it's relatively even numbers, and they have better guns. So, yeah, I mean, it's brutal. It's so bloody.
So it's not like Star Wars when they're always shooting at the stormtroopers or whatever, and nobody dies.
And not hitting, yeah. No, it's really not. It's absolutely brutal, and these weapons are just phenomenally powerful, particularly the plasma weapons. So what I've done is I've done something that, and I've asked the RPG community that I could find whether they've seen it before, and no one really seems to have done. You don't play one character in this game, you play two. And that's for various reasons, not least the military kind of society that I was talking about, but also because of the fact that the combat's so lethal. So what you do is you play one officer, and the officer stays on the ship. There's no Captain Kirk here. You know, people who are the captain don't go down unless there is genuinely a diplomatic incident. Think Captain Picard, right? He's not allowed to go down, right? His place is aboard the ship, commanding the ship, and making sure that the ship is okay. So the captain and all of the officers fall into that category. They don't really go down to the surface. There's a junior officer who commands the Espatiers, which are space marines, basically, who goes down to the surface with them. Again, for an analogy, think Lieutenant Gorman from Aliens, right? That kind of officer. So, I mean, they aren't always that inept, but yeah, I mean, that level of officer will go down with them. Now, that means that you actually have two potential sort of scenarios that could even be going on at the same time, right? So you might have the ship in battle against another ship in orbit, while on the ground the troops are trying to fight off, you know, people who don't want them there, or Lunar Republic spies or whatever. So you play one officer and one Espatier, and they're both on the same character sheet. That's just you. And you'll probably flick between them all at the same time. So, you know, the players might be playing the officers and doing the space combat, and then either you do a turn of the space combat or a few turns of the space combat, and then you switch down to the planet, right? And then they will have their go, you know, I mean, maybe they're even negotiating at the same time as the ship in orbit is fighting. You get endless possibilities, and it gives you an opportunity, which I think is quite rare in role-playing games, to sort of have A, a break, and B, when you come up with a character concept and you come up with another character concept and both are brilliant and you want to do both. I see that a lot in my group. There's one guy in particular who's brilliant coming up with character concepts. He comes up with loads and loads and then is heartbroken that he has to choose one.
There you go. You solved the problem.
I have. And it thematically fits the game so well that, you know, I thought, okay, look, here's what I'll do. It was after a conversation with Richard where he said, I wonder how you deal with this divide that you've got. And, you know, sort of together we came up with this idea that we'll have these two different officers and Espatiers who are both your character. It also means that if you want to sort of, if you end up in a situation where maybe there are borders on the ship, right? You could play your officer, you could play your Espatier. You know, maybe some of the Espatiers are escorting one of the officers to the weapons console, right? Auxiliary control, because the bridge has been taken and you still want to open fire on the ship that's nearby. It gives you this chance to do more than, you know, more than just, here's my character, here's the way it has to be, it's always got to be this way. Plus, because the Espatiers die so much, and they really, really do, I cannot exaggerate that enough, they are kind of a bit cannon foddery. Because they die so often, you don't feel like you're losing your character by one dying so much, because you've still got the other half of your character.
Well, there you go. And can they ever be both in the same, both characters, can they ever both be in the same scenario, like on Parent Trap, where they had the two characters, but they had to do mirrors or whatnot? Otherwise, they were in never in the same room or whatnot?
It is possible that they were in the same place. And at that point, you know, the player and the GM would have to do something. But if I was the GM, and when I have been, I would always recommend that in any given scene, if you like, you will either have the person being the Espatier, or you will have the person being the officer for every single character, right? So if it's an officer or two officers being escorted by Espatiers, then those officers don't play Espatiers, they play the officers, right? And the Espatiers play the Espatiers. And maybe the Espatiers come to the bridge to escort the two officers away. Because they're going down to the planet for whatever reason. Maybe it's an engineer who's going to fix a piece of machinery on the planet. Then the captain might say goodbye, good luck, but that would be about it, right? That would kind of be the limit of the interaction. And the captain might be playing one of those Espatiers I was talking about. And then during the majority of the scene, or the story thread, all that's happening is the Espatier is playing. I said that really badly. And then during the majority of the scene, the Espatier, the character, one more time. During the majority of the scene, the player who's playing the captain would just play the Espatier all the time. And then when you get back to the ship, or if we flip back to the ship, because, oh no, there's an enemy ship approaching, then, you're talking about having the captain, but then there is no chief engineer. So maybe the chief engineer who's down on the planet, the player who's playing that character, is playing an Espatier engineer who's been put in that spot because he's a good engineer. Or maybe he's playing someone completely different. Maybe you just have to do without an engineer. There's a lot of flexibility there to do what you like, and to make the story as realistic as you feel is correct.
There you go. So with playing the two characters at the same time, we have yet to get it to the table. Well, no, we did get it to the table, but we haven't got it to the table yet in the 2-player mode. But we just recently picked up Gamer Monopoly Mario Kart Edition, and when you play 2 players, you both be 2 different characters. So it kind of reminds me of that, but it's completely different too.
Yeah, it's more akin to playing 4 characters in that game. 2 each.
There you go. And you said there's a lot of dying and whatnot.
There is. Mostly among the Espatiers, although if you end up getting boarded and people are running around in your ship with weapons, there are also some very, very specific rules for a few things, such as microgravity combat.
What can you tell us about that?
Obviously, a lot of the combat has gone on in space during the history of this setting. So, the weapons are kind of like the rifles are designed to absorb the momentum to the maximum possible effect. But if you are completely without thrusters or whatever in microgravity, then you're likely to end up in problem. You're likely to end up needing to use angular momentum to move around. It is possible. It's been demonstrated wonderfully on a video that I saw of a few people in space, or anyway in a zero-G environment. You're able to turn, you're able to move, but it's extremely difficult, and you have to roll some very challenging rolls in order to achieve good movement. In terms of if someone boards the ship and they start firing these plasma weapons around, they will breach the hull. They have a 30% chance of not breaching the hull. So they have a 70% chance of breaching the hull. Right? That's pretty high. If you go around starting to fire those kinds of weapons on board a ship, you're gonna really regret it. Which is actually part of the joke that is the front cover, and also the first image in the body of the Kickstarter. Not the title image, but the one below it. That's actually a bunch of Espatiers jumping onto a Lunar Republic frigate with plasma rifles, so they can run around breaching the hull in every location they can find. Because the Battlecruiser, which is in the sort of the back right of that image, is their ship, and they are trying to defend it in the best way they can. Right? So they are literally leaping aboard the ship with rifles they know will breach the hull and kill anyone that their weapons fire touches, in order to try to disrupt and damage the ship.
Cool. And so how does somebody, I know it's like a role-playing game or whatnot, but what's the purpose? Like, I guess try to be the last man standing, or kill all the other races, or how's that work?
No, actually, the purpose is exploration at the end of the day. The problem... So you go around, and there are many, many notes in the back of the book about sort of aliens, secrets of the setting, things you might find. We've written up loads and loads of campaigns that you can try out, and so on. And the goal is really exploration. The thing is that the thing that complicates that goal is all of these, these traitors, these spies, these mutinies, these people who think that, they are better equipped to run this organization than the current leaders of it.
Okay.
So they're really getting in the way of what is for you exploration, contacting lost human colonies. There's a bit of a mystery as to why, but there are a lot of human colonies beyond sort of the reaches of any of our three factions that I've mentioned, and no one really knows how they got there. So one of the things that you've got to do is you've got to go out and explore.
Okay, so it's like Christopher Columbus in space.
It sort of is, yeah. It is a little like that. It's exploration, it's finding, you'll find advanced civilizations, but you're not sure, how they got there or how they got to be the way they are. And they're, in general, not sharing that information because it was quite a long time ago. The people who remember or the records that remember aren't really in any position to be accessed.
Okay, cool. And I really like the part about where you have the two different characters. I see that if they want to, they can go and watch a video about creating the two characters on your Kickstarter page. But what can you tell us about character creation of the two different characters, Ed?
So, for anyone who has looked at our previous games, character creation is going to be very, very familiar. It actually operates on the same principle. You assign points to attributes, you assign points to skills, and you make the choices for the way you want your character to be. So, on the video, I actually make an officer hacker and an espatier hacker. Now, there's no reason that has to be the case. You can have a complete meathead as this. Oh, excuse me. There's no reason why that has to be the case. You can have a complete meathead as the espatier, someone who's just strong and completely dumb. And then you can have the medical officer who's sort of weak and weedy as your officer, if you like. So you get a lot of different choices. But the way it works is just character creation for a normal game with a few bits that are cut off because they're not needed. And then you do it a second time. And I made the entire character in about 10 minutes. The entire double character in about, 10, 12 minutes. And that was with explaining what I was doing as I went. So once you get used to the character creation, it's very, very quick. And if your espatier does die, you can create a new one in about 5 minutes.
Okay, well, there you go. Yeah, because 5 minutes per character, so 10 minutes, that makes sense. There you go. So, yeah, so that's pretty cool. So, per se, Ed, I know we have a running joke on my podcast and nobody has come back to say whether it be true or not. But per se, they've fallen asleep, Ed. It wouldn't be because of you or your great new role-playing adventures or whatnot. It would be because of me and my podcast. At the first week, we're already the first week through April, and from the first of the year, we've already dropped. This morning we dropped our 53rd episode of the podcast.
Busy time.
So they're a little bit worn out of my voice. They get a little bit tired of me drone on and on. But suddenly they're jolted awake so they don't hit that oncoming spaceship, I guess, if they're in space or whatever they're doing.
Indeed.
But now you have their full attention, Ed. Why should they take a chance on Battlecruiser Alamo RPG powered by Air D10, especially with all the other great, I've seen some different campaigns and other things with the role-playing games being dropped on the Kickstarter recently?
Very simply, this is a setting which is so well described and well thought out. There are 40 novels that take place in this setting, and we're only scratching the surface with this. And yet, it is a complete game. It's 230 pages long. It's written by the author of these novels who's been at it for 10 years. So this guy knows this setting inside and out. He has thought of absolutely everything that might possibly go wrong, right? It's got this unique thing of you play more than one character. I've never seen that anywhere else. There have been some house rules which are vaguely similar, where you play a character in a party of sort of minion characters, but these two characters that you play are both characters in their own right. It's compatible with all of the other Era D10 games, which you can also pick up on this Kickstarter. So if you like sci-fi, you can go and pick up Era the Consortium. If you like superheroes, you can pick up our Era the Empowered game. You can pick up our high fantasy game, Era Silence. Any of the games that we've done, we've made 7, you can pick them up on this Kickstarter as well. And they're all compatible rules-wise. You can just sort of chop and cut rules that you like into any other scenario.
Yeah, I saw that. I thought that was pretty cool that you got your other games listed on there.
Those are the 3 primary reasons. It really is an awesome game. It's got some unique bits to it. It's not just another role-playing game. And it's a role-playing game that is set in a universe that is so carefully thought out over such a long period of time. And it's written by someone who is incredibly skillful at writing. You know, I love editing his work. He's so good. I really, all I can say is I've enjoyed playing this game.
Well, there you go. And yeah, so you want to make sure you check that out. And like I said, we'll leave all the links in the show notes on how you can find out more about this, and also the novels, the 3 that it looks like in the Kickstarter campaign that you got those 3 novels listed. And
that's right. They're about to. Oh, they're actually about to go on sale. The novels are about to go on sale.
Oh, okay. There you go. So they're going to put them on sale. Just the first 3?
I believe it's just the first 3. Yeah.
Okay, so they're about to go on sale, so look for that, and we'll put the links in the show notes as well. And by going ahead and taking a chance on Battlecruiser Alamo RPG powered by Air 10 and playing it and getting through that 230-page book, then you're not only that, you're creating, you want to get more content and more content, therefore making Ed read more than the first 5 books so we can get through that 40-book series.
Yeah, I mean, I should say, if 230 pages sounds a bit intimidating, there is also a player's guide, which contains a 1-page summary. I read you a chunk of that just at the start of this podcast. It doesn't explain a huge amount, but it does give you the basis of what you need in order to start playing. And the rulebook, although it's 230 pages, only about 50 of that is rules. About 30 of that is character creation, and the rest is setting campaigns. So if you are a GM and you're sitting there and you're GMing something and you're going, oh dear, what's this faction like? You can turn to a page that's listed in the contents, and you can find a 1-page summary with subtitles. The laws of the Lunar Republic are like this, right? And they tend to get uppity when you do this. So we've got it all summarized and laid out in a way that we've learned from the experience of doing 7 role-playing games, right? This is our 8th. We've learned from that, and that's the reason that I'm on the team, you know, alongside Richard's awesome sort of story writing. He's been able to sort of structure all of the information in a way that's going to be accessible to a GM. And that's something that's very, very important. Plus, if you decide that, you know, if you're listening and role-playing games really aren't for you, but the universe sounds interesting, and maybe you have a look at the novels and you want to know a little more about the setting, what we've done is we've actually done what we're calling a setting guide. It's the lowest tier there. It's the £5 tier. It's only about the same cost as one of his books. And it is, it's got all of the information about the locations, the factions, and so on. And it's sort of actually been written as the definitive guide to the Triplanetary Confederation. Like, I had a Star Trek encyclopedia growing up. It had all of the information about anything I might want to look up. I could look it up, and there it was. This is that for the Alamo universe, if you happen to be a fan of the novels, or if you pick up the novels and you become a fan. And it's unique. Again, it's unique to this Kickstarter.
There you go. And yeah, so that's cool. And I want to say they can get everything in either digital or paper. Am I correct, Ed?
That's correct, with the exception of the setting guide. That's digital only. Because it is intended for the audience that likes the books, and the books are mostly digital only.
Okay. Now, some of the fans might be wondering, did Richard approach you, or did you approach Richard, or how did that go down?
Actually, we were introduced by a mutual friend. So there's an individual named Keith who has been working with me for 5 years now. He's my layout guy, and he's also done a fair bit of artwork. Also, he's the artist for Era the Empowered, so I probably mentioned him in the last podcast at some point. Now, he's also been the cover artist for Richard Tongue for years and years and years, ever since Richard started this 40 book series. So he has, he's known both of us for a very long time. He said to me one day, look, Richard's looking to do some more stuff with his universe, and do you think you'd want to do a role-playing game in it? And I said, yeah, absolutely. That sounds fantastic. So Richard and I sort of sat down and we met up at the UK Games Expo in June last year. And, we talked about what the possibilities would be, what the book would look like, and so on. It was an incredibly positive meeting. It's one of the most positive meetings I've had about role-playing games ever. We really got on. We really have a very similar idea of how sci-fi should work. We got on really, really well, and we decided, okay, look, let's go ahead with it.
Okay, cool. And is this all written already?
Yeah, it's all done. It needs one more pass by me editing. It needs a proofreading pass, and we've committed to delivering by December. But if I'm honest, my aim is to get it done by June.
Oh wow!
I want to have it at the UK Games Expo, because Richard's going to be there again. I would love to sit down with him and be able to sort of, sit down and talk to people or maybe do a panel or whatever about this game and what it's like to get a license, because some people are very interested in that. What it's like to make a role-playing game in a universe that's so established and so sort of understood by the creator. And I'm sure that he would have some comments about working with a role-playing game creator, which might interest some novelists out there. So, I'm looking forward to the UK Games Expo. I think we're on track to achieve it. I'm not making that commitment firmly yet. You never know. Things can go wrong, and I do have other things on at the moment as well. Prior commitments, obviously, Era the Empowered also. But Era the Empowered is, we're aiming to release it in the last weekend of May. So if all goes to plan, I think that it's very doable. Era the Empowered is currently in proofreading. So I reckon that all of this is achievable within the sort of the month and a half that we've got. That's where we're at. I would like to have it for the first weekend of June for the UK Games Expo, and I will not allow that to happen unless we have already sent out the rewards to the Kickstarter people.
Well, there you go. Yeah, I remember you saying that.
That's something I'm very, very firm on. Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty good. And so worst case scenario, you'll have it for Christmas at least, it sounds like, at the latest.
Yeah, I think Christmas is an incredibly generous deadline, and those people who back the Kickstarter and have backed my other Kickstarters, I hope, will realize that, I always put in a deadline that I know is achievable, even if things go wrong. And then I aim for a deadline that I want to hit. And I don't always hit that deadline that I want to hit. Sometimes it takes a bit longer. I wanted to have the Era of the Consortium books from the Expansions Volume 2 campaign, which I think was the first time I was on this podcast. I wanted to have those done by the 1st of April. Home base is dragging on a bit because I decided to expand it. And that's that's almost always the reason for delays. I decide I want to put more in the book, right? I have a plan, and then I modify that plan because I think, but this is awesome. This is really, really good, and it'll really add to the play experience. I really want to include it. And that's usually where the delays come from. It comes from the love of the games that we're creating. So I seldom apologize for those delays. I just make sure that the timeline I commit to, which in the case of Era of the Consortium was also October, I make sure the timeline I commit to is totally achievable no matter what.
There you go. So do you see a lot of crossover from your different Kickstarters of people who back one will come back and back the other ones and so on and so forth?
I do see a fair bit. I think that we have a lot of very loyal fans of what we create. I think, there's also obviously some churn, but there always is in these things. If someone doesn't have money this month, or would really really like it but just can't see themselves ever playing this with their group because their group doesn't like superheroes, for example. But the vast majority of the time, we see a lot of people who come back from previous Kickstarters because what we produce are good games. And I think that everyone knows that. You only have to crack open one of our books. I stand by every single book we've ever created. I think they're high quality, especially for an indie studio. And, I regret none of the books we've created. I think that they're all very, very good. They all do exactly what they were supposed to do. And I think that that's the reason that people come back, because when we produce another game and people think back to the last game that they got, maybe it's Era the Consortium or maybe it's Era the Empowered, but they think back to the last game that they got and they think, actually that was a really, really good book, and maybe we played it or maybe we didn't, but we're about to, or whatever the situation is. I can see that this game's also going to be really, really well thought out, well illustrated. We get some of the best illustrators, and Keith is no slacker when it comes to illustration. You'll see just scrolling through the Kickstarter, his art is brilliant. And this is something that I think, as long as we maintain this, I think people will continue to come back, because I think what we're doing is we're producing games that are different, at least slightly, and interesting.
There you go. And I want to say this, I know you're planning on going on some other podcasts, but I want to say, depending on when we get this episode up and running, you heard it here first on Getting Geeky with Game Relief. Am I correct?
I think you probably did, yeah. I am going to be going on some other podcasts, but you leapt in first this time. It's a pleasure to be here talking about it. I have done, if anyone is not, I can't imagine why this would occur, but if anyone is not so into podcasts, except obviously your one, and would like to actually read a text version of a Q&A, I actually did a text Q&A on hashtag RPG.net, and the link to that is actually available in the Kickstarter. And you can go through and you can read through all the questions that everyone asked me. I talked a lot more about the setting and some details of the setting I've not mentioned here. I talked here about things I didn't mention there as well. So it's just to do with the questions I get asked. But if you're interested in a lot of the details of the setting or how Hendeka space actually works, that's the hyperspace in this world. I actually go into a lot of detail. We started talking about the scientific details of Lagrange points, because it's related to Hendeka space, and people ask the question. So.
Well, there you go. Yeah, it depends on the questions you get asked and whatnot. So, probably somebody's asked before. I know you're focused on this current campaign right now. It looks like at the time of this recording, it had just over 3 weeks left to go. But what are your plans? What are the plans of Shades of Vengeance? Do you got more stuff coming out next month or whatnot?
It will not surprise you at all to hear that we definitely have more stuff coming soon. So at the moment, obviously I'm working through the last of those Era of the Consortium expansions. I mentioned Home Base a little earlier. The other one for that campaign, for anyone who's listening on from the first episode, was the Time Travel Part 4. Time Travel Campaign Part 4. That one has been proofread now, and I'm just doing the changes. So whenever a book gets proofread, I don't necessarily agree with everything the proofreader says. The proofreader and I, Hande, and Callie as well, who's the second round proofreader, we have a very good relationship, the three of us. And, if I go, no, then, we just don't include it and no harm done. We have a very, very, a very strong relationship, and we've been working together for a couple of years now. And that's meant that we've worked on a lot of different books. So the Time Travel Part 4 stuff has come back, and I'm working on implementing those changes now. I'm also working on Home Base, although I'm a little bit stuck on some of the artwork that's being done, and that's the extra artwork that I talked about. It shows the inside of the ships, because in Home Base you're able to put like modules into a base, And so each base has a certain number of slots. And what I've done is I've illustrated 5 of those bases to show you, oh, here are the number of slots on those bases, and this is how that might look. So I'm kind of blocked on home base, which is why I have time to do the other things. Proofreading changes is one of those things that's sort of a bit head desking at times. You can't do too much of it all at once. It only came back the day before yesterday, so I've already done about half of it, which is not bad. But there's a limit to what you can do at a time, because you're really reading through the stuff that you had already edited and then trying to make changes to that and try and think about whether it's the right English change, grammar change, or if this thing really doesn't make any sense, or, if it has the correct context that you really did mean. And then I'm also obviously working on writing Era the Empowered, which slots in quite nicely with that proofreading. I've got some more Empowered stuff to write, although it's off for proofreading. That's the first half. So the rulebook's 300 pages or so, and the first sort of 180 pages is off for proofreading. And I'm waiting to hear back on that. So what I do is I sort of very cleverly slot stuff in at times. But while I'm working on all of that, we actually have a game that we completed, prototyped, and play-tested during last year. And it's called Evil Overlord.
Yeah, the card game. You told me about it last time.
And I think I mentioned it. Last time. That's coming. That'll be on Kickstarter at the end of May. And we'll be talking about it at both MCM Comic Con and UK Games Expo. So that's there. We're also, excuse me, sorry. I think last time I spoke about Blue Shift, the comic that was going on. Yeah. So that was funded really successfully. It's the best comic we've ever done. We've since finished it, printed it, sent it, and we're now on to our next comic called Violet, which is based in the same universe. It's really exciting, this one, because this was my first role-playing character, which we've then obviously taken and twisted and made into a sort of a viable comic character. And Violet is now more than funded. It's already unlocked. A couple of stretch goals.
Oh, it's going on too at the same time.
At the same time, so the SOV Comics division, which is run by my colleague John, he originally started with me as a writer on Era the Consortium, and he's been a comics writer for 15 years. He worked for some of the big names. Unfortunately, it's NDA'd, so I can't give you any details. I do know them, but I'm not allowed to tell you. He goes away, and we often write the scripts together. I do a lot of editing on his scripts, and he does a lot of editing on my scripts, and we'll write the scripts together. Sometimes we even alternate pages. So I wrote this script with actually a different writer, Jennifer, who is one of the main writers on Era the Consortium and Era the Empowered. She co-wrote most of the stories of Era Survival with me. So I've been working with her for years as well. And we wrote Violet together. And John then went through and edited. He's an experienced dialogue editor. And we've arranged the artist, and the artist has done now 11 pages, which is the full comic, unless we unlock additional pages. And as I say that, we are literally $2 away from the next stretch goal. We're at $798 as of recording, and we're about to unlock the next stretch goal, which is postcards for everyone.
Well, there you go. So probably by the time this releases, that'll already be unlocked. So go ahead and jump over there and back that, and you can get a postcard.
Yeah, you get a postcard. You can get the physical comic, and if we manage to reach the 1600 stretch goal, we will double the length of the comic. And if we manage to reach the 1200 stretch goal, we will increase the length of the comic by a number of pages, 2 to 4.
And when does this one end, Ed?
This one ends in 8 days from now. That is Monday, April the 16th.
So yeah, I might just have a little bit of time So yeah, if it's still going, and on yours, if the campaign's over, do they still have the time to pre-order, or how does that work?
So if you miss the campaign for a comic at the moment, you do not have the opportunity to get hold of it. I'm afraid. The comics division is relatively new and not quite as experienced as the role-playing game side. But we are working to put stuff in place at the moment. For the role-playing games, if you miss it, I usually offer a PayPal option where you can pledge for it.
Okay, there you go.
And therefore, you're able to go ahead and do that if you wish to.
There you go. There you go. Cool. So we don't want to keep you all night. Well, I guess it wouldn't be all night, or it'd be all day over there.
It's all morning, actually. Yeah. No, it's 7 a.m. at the moment. 8 a.m. nearly.
Yeah, we appreciate you waking up early, so that's awesome.
You're very welcome.
But anyways, Ed, I don't know if you've got to listen to our Hot Balls episode, but we actually added a new, well, we haven't added it fully, but I guess we'll go ahead and implement it here. I talked to my daughter about doing it, but the next, I haven't named it. Maybe my fans can go ahead and email me at gamerelief@gamereliefgo.com to tell me some kind of names they might like. But when you're role-playing, is there a certain candy that you've found that works good?
And I don't know if you have it in the US. That's the only thing. The tradition for me, and this dates all the way back to when I first started role playing. Role playing with people who weren't my family. Back at university, there is a pack of candy, as you would say, over here called Lots of Lollies. And it's got various kinds of lollipops, basically, right? There are drumsticks, there are double lollies, and all kinds, right? Everyone will find something they will eat in there, and it's a big bag. It costs £1, so that's like $1.30, and it will feed a table of 4. It'll keep them happy and sugar filled for a couple of hours at least, and that's my tradition. I try and get those when I'm getting hold of stuff to snack on at games, unless I'm getting hold of healthier stuff. My actual gaming group is actually doing more of a healthy trend. We get fruit, which I consider highly boring, and yet I still eat it. But yeah, I mean, we sometimes get fruit. We even get sometimes salami or cheese. We're a bit odd. I'll concede that.
Well, there you go. So yeah, lots of lollies, so that's good.
Lots of lollies if you live in the UK. Highly recommended.
There you go. Yeah, but I think I want to say about 10% of our audience is over there still, it looks like.
I can't speak for American candy so much because it's a bit odd tasting to me. Your chocolate to me tastes really waxy.
Oh boy.
I don't find it very pleasant at all. Our chocolate is a lot sweeter. It's got a lot more sugar in. And there aren't very many things you can say that about in the US versus the UK.
Oh boy. There you go. So yeah, you heard it here first on Getting Geeky with Gamer Relief. What Ed likes to eat at his gaming groups or whatnot. But like I said, we don't want to keep you all day, Ed, but we appreciate you taking time out of your Saturday morning cartoons to join us on Getting Geeky with Gamer Relief.
You are most welcome, and I hope that I'll be back before too long talking about Evil Overlord.
For sure, I don't see why not.
Brilliant.
It's time for Kickstarter Corner. To begin now.
You heard her right, ladies and gents. Kickstarter Corner. But beforehand, remember to go ahead and jump over to GamerLeaf at gamerleafgo.com to sign up so you can get on our mailing list to find out about exclusive content, as well as getting podcasts before the general audience, as well as being entered into giveaways upcoming. Look for next Thursday, well, this Thursday in fact, to hear more about that. But anyways, getting on with Kickstarter Corner, Mobster Metropolis. Create your syndicate, rise to power. Invest in turfs and recruits or conduct drive-bys in order to become the most powerful gangster boss in this 2-to-4 player strategy game by Storm Macton Productions. And we had two different Carls, both from we teased about it, but it may be true, the Swedish Mob on, and they'll be joining us this upcoming week, so watch out for them. This game has funded, and they have, at the time of recording, 11 days to go. They go through next Thursday, the 26th of April, so definitely get on that bandwagon and help them get the stretch goals that they're going for, 13 and up, as it is about mobsters and different things like that. Then a little bit more family-friendly game is Dobbers Quest for the Key, which is on Kickstarter starting on today, the 16th of April. So if it's not ready to go by the time you hear this, just click that link and it will take you there when it's ready. Or you can sign up for the mailing list to be notified the exact hour that it goes along. We'll also have the creator of this on the show, this great game, on the show as well. It is more than a deck building game. It's an epic encounter building adventure board game for 2 to 4 players. Some of the people who have reviewed it and whatnot have compared it with Clank, but instead of going against the board, you're actually going against the other players. So that's awesome, ain't it? And then don't forget about No Escape. No Escape is a competitive maze building. Take that game for 2 to 8 players. Try to get out of the escape pod before everyone else. This sounds like an awesome game. We'll as well have the creator of this on this week. So thus far, all 3 games we've mentioned on Getting Geeky with Game Relief will go ahead and be on a Kickstarter creation episode. So watch out for them. And then On Their Merry Way board game. It's a light strategy board game featuring Robin Hood's Merry Men with an all-new path-building mechanic and a one-of-a-kind artwork. And this one goes through, it's a shorter campaign going 18 days. They go through the 3rd of May, so definitely check this one out. It's a lot of green, but that's okay. You are Robin Hood and the Merry Men after all. So definitely check this one out on the Kickstarter. And not this week, but the following week, we're going to have them on the Kickstarter creation episode. So watch out for that. That'd be awesome. We'll talk to Chris, the creator, and he's not a first-time creator or whatnot. So definitely check that out. And then, did you ever watch Terminator growing up in the 80s, or have you seen it since then, or the 90s, whatever you want to call it? There's actually a game based on this. Terminator Genesis, Rise of the Resistance. It's a cooperative 1 to 4 player action adventure game featuring an original campaign set in the 2029 Terminator universe. They're going towards their goal. They're going for 80,000 and they're currently at 65,500. So yeah, definitely check this one out. They go through the 30th of April, so definitely check this one out. That will be awesome, especially if you're a Terminator fan. So definitely check that out. And then Arena the Contest. It's a tabletop miniatures board game for, well, actually it's a fantastical tactical combat miniature tabletop game for 1 to 8 players with a cooperative dungeon crawler as well as player versus player team competition. If wrecking balls stop hitting the Leaf family, we will go ahead and hopefully be able to bring you a review of this game. It's getting close to ending. They have 11 days at the time of this recording. So hopefully they end on Thursday, the April 26th at 5 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. So hopefully almost a week beforehand you'll be able to hear about it from us. Wait, did they end this? No. Not this Thursday. Actually, let's see. I'll look at my calendar for sure. They end, not this next Thursday, but the following one. So hopefully this Friday beforehand, which will give you almost a week to hear what the Leafs think about it. Hopefully, we'll be able to bring you a review or preview of that on Getting Geeky with Game Relief. And then, you remember Tay T Woo, we reviewed Kung Pao Chicken from him. He's got Cat Rescue. The game of saving cats. Cat Rescue is a 1 to 4 player co-op game. Players work together to save cats and adopt them, just like in real life. And this game is great. They're really stomping away those stretch goals. They're at 300% funded. They were going for $5,000. They're at $15,000. And you know what? there's actually going to be an app for that. How cool is that? Got to ask Tate if we can possibly review that for Getting Geeky with Game Relief Adventures in Application Acquisition. And then some games did launch on Friday the 13th, if you imagine that. And just to remind you, on Mobster Metropolis, that is a 13 and plus game. So make sure, that's 13 and plus. And then, like I said, Friday the 13th, there was some games that launched. One of them being The Exorcism at the House of Moncton Falls. So this one is a cooperative worker movement set collecting game themed around the exorcism of ghosts taking up residence in a haunted house. Players take turns exploring the manor, searching for tools, unlocking hidden rooms, and using tools to complete a variety of tasks. They recommend 11 plus. It's a 60-minute game, and it's for 2 to 4 players. Definitely check out this game. And then last but not least, we've got, if you want to go back to The Exorcism, that goes through Sunday, May 13th. So definitely check that one out. And then last but not least, like I was saying before, we got Wonder Cammer, the card game of curating curious collections. A tabletop game where players compete to acquire unusual artifacts and curate the most magnificent cabinet of curiosity. It's 3 to 5 players. They're got about a week to their goal. Hopefully they make it. They're at 7,100 and they're going for just under 11,100. So you can make this game become a reality. Check it out on the Kickstarters. We'll make sure we leave links in the show notes for all of these great games. Also, definitely check out Ed Jowett's great game, as it only goes through, he's almost over 2. So make sure you check that one out. It runs through the 29th of April, so Sunday the 29th of April. Definitely check that one out. It's based on the books, and I believe they're on sale according to when I had my conversation with Ed. But definitely check that out. And reminder, you don't want to be left in the dark when it comes to getting geeky with Game Relief. So make sure you sign up for our mailing list at www.gamereliefgo.com. Kind of like Pokemon Go, but gamereliefgo.com. And look out for all the great interviews we have coming up to you. Also, you want to make sure that you sign up for our mailing list because it could drop anytime. I don't know when. But we recently talked with Jamie Stegmeyer from Stonemeyer Games, and you will get that episode before anybody else does if you sign up for our mailing list. So go to www.gamereliefgo.com, and it's that time again. I hope you stayed with us this long, but even if you haven't, and even if you're tired and sad that we're leaving, go ahead and get geeky, stay geeky, and bring others into the geek fold, and we'll catch you all on the, you guessed it, flip side. Game Relief out.
Gamer Leaf levels up. Tune in next week to see if Gamer Leaf's luck holds up.